Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on educator well-being, hosted by Renee Van Norman of WellEducator and supported by Northwest PBIS Network and Northwest Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. The University of Washington Smart Center and Northwest MHTTC, Northwest PBIS Network, and WellEducator acknowledge that we learn, live, and work on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people and the ancestral lands of the Kalapuya and Sayusa people who walked here before us and those who still walk here. We are grateful to respectfully live and work as guests on these lands with the Native people who call this home. Dr. Van Norman is a curious, compassionate visionary with a passion for teaching and educator well-being. Over the past 20 years, she has worked in a variety of roles in education, including higher education, early childhood education, and as an education specialist at the state level. In these roles, she witnessed firsthand the need to support the well-being of our education workforce. Her passion for educator well-being and her effective and engaging presentations inspire educators to define and follow their own well-being plan for the betterment of themselves, their students, and the institution in which they serve. When she is not working, she enjoys hiking, camping, birding, and time with her partner Keith and 2 dogs, Charlie and Zoe. And with that, I will hand this presentation over to Renee. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, Sarah, for that lovely introduction. And welcome to Interrupt Unhelpful Habits through Mindful Practices That Work. This is really about cultivating mindful awareness. And we're going to spend the next hour together talking about how to practice mindfulness in a way to cultivate that mindful awareness, to interrupt some of those unhelpful habits that we might find ourselves engaging in. First, let me orient you to some reflective notes that you may have received and may be working with today. Reflective notes are designed for you to follow along and actively participate with this webinar. We know it can be difficult to be on the other end of a computer, and so you can make notes, write questions, expand your thinking on a topic, or just doodle. But these are corresponding directly to the content presented in the PowerPoint slides. I typically don't give out my PowerPoint slides because they have a lot of pictures in them, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to just look at the pictures. But the reflective notes have a lot of the notes that are corresponding with the information in the PowerPoint. I'm going to shut off my video now so we can focus on the information in today's webinar. So what are our objectives today? What's our roadmap? Today we're going to learn the benefits of mindfulness practices for educators. We'll understand how unhelpful habits can form and how mindful practices can help interrupt a habit loop. We'll learn and experience several mindfulness exercises, if you're willing, and create a committed action plan. But right now, I'd like you to settle in for a moment and take a moment to reflect on why you became an educator. Think about the values that motivated you. Think about your why. Then set your intention for your time here today. Really settle in and become present in this moment. So just take a moment and settle into the here and now. Hopefully that gave you a moment to set your intention for your time here. You're here for your own well-being. And settling into your why you got into being an educator in the first place, is one of the core components of mindfulness, setting an intention. So let's start with a definition of mindfulness. Jon Kabat-Zinn has probably the most cited definition of mindfulness, and that's paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally, neither good nor bad. And there's 3 fundamental processes of mindfulness: forming an intention, just like you did just a moment ago; paying attention, which I'm hoping you're able to now that you've set your intention; and adjusting your attitude, neither good nor bad. So if you're falling out of attention during our webinar today, adjusting your attitude and not judging yourself. And of course, not judging your judging. Mindfulness as a practice. There's two different types of attention. There's focused attention, where you're focusing on a particular stimulus. So for example, this principle anchors her attention on the sound of a chime, or feeling the air as it enters her nostrils as she breathes. And this is happening before a staff meeting. So mindfully paying attention to a particular stimulus, a focused attention. And then there's open awareness, where you're taking in all that's in your surroundings into your senses. For example, this teacher calms himself after a difficult interaction by practicing open awareness, taking in all that's in the body sensations, such as a chill or a sneeze passing through him, and then noticing a loud car driving by his classroom. This is more open awareness type of attention. Let's watch a video by Happify that tells us about how mindfulness can empower us and how we use different types of attention to have mindfulness really empower us.
There is a story, usually attributed to the Native American tradition, which illuminates different ways of paying attention. An elder, talking to a child, says, "I have two wolves fighting in my heart. One wolf is fearful, vengeful, envious, resentful, and deceitful. The other wolf is compassionate, loving, generous, truthful, and peaceful." The child asks, "Which wolf will win the fight?" The elder responds, "The one I feed." That doesn't mean we try to deny or hurt or kill the angry wolf. If we did that, we'd end up in a long battle, all the while somehow making that wolf more powerful through our hostility and fear. Hating that wolf sucks the strength right out of us. Instead, we calmly pay attention to the angry wolf and let go of believing they have the answers. If we can do that, they end up lying down next to us, no longer an enemy. We help strengthen the kind and loving wolf, giving it nourishment and support so that we can follow it. That peaceful wolf can become our steady companion and show us the way through all kinds of different life experiences. Restful or chaotic, enjoyable or disappointing experiences may come and go, but we can have a guide with us through it all. This is what mindfulness can help you do. Mindfulness allows us to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning. It's very powerful to know what we're feeling as we're feeling it, know what we're thinking as we're thinking it. With mindfulness, we can choose what will strengthen and bring into action, and we can choose what we will gently let go of. We don't have to be at the mercy of old habits or old ways of thinking or old ways of being. We are empowered. It just takes practice.
As the video suggests, mindfulness is a practice. And in order to cultivate mindful awareness, we need to practice it. So how do we go about doing that? Marsha Linehan, the founder and creator of dialectical behavior therapy, talks about the how and what skills of mindfulness. The what skills are how we observe, engaging in wordless watching, describe, put our world into words, and participate, jump in, and fully do. Our how skills are non-judgmentally, neither good nor bad. One, mindfully, we let go of multitasking and do one thing in the moment, and effectively, we do what works for us. Let's look at some examples of how we might do this on any day. So our what skills? How could we observe and practice observing any day, anytime? We could pick up a rock and notice all the details like a scientist and do wordless observing. We can listen to music and notice the space between the notes. We can use all our senses and taste the mint in our mouth as if we're tasting it for the very first time. We can notice that urge to avoid someone or something and just notice what that feels like in our body, in our thoughts. And we can observe that tenseness in our body. How about describing? We can use all the words we can think of to find when we find things in nature. We can describe what a person is doing using all the words that we can describe and think of. How about I feel and my thoughts are, being as descriptive as possible. And we can participate, dancing like no one is watching, singing like no one is listening, and fully immerse ourselves in a conversation, fully participate. And we can use our how skills when we're doing it, non-judgmentally, one mindfully, and effectively, while we're observing, describing, and participating. How do we practice our how skills? For example, non-judgmentally. We can see things, but not evaluate them as good or bad, just report the facts. And when we find ourselves judging, like I mentioned earlier, don't judge our judging. How many of us get stuck doing that? And how about one mindfully? We can remind ourselves when we're doing something to slow down and say, just this moment, just this task. We can try to let go of distractions, and we can refocus our attention when we get distracted. And how do we practice being effective? We can remind ourselves of our goals in the moment. We can focus on what works, and we can be willing. These are all ideas from Marsha Linehan's book that she published in 2015 on dialectical behavior therapy. We all need reminders sometime. And I'm proud to say this is around my apartment because I need to have some reminders sometimes to practice my how and what skills. So on the left-hand side is some tea, and just this moment, just this task making tea. When I was starting to practice my how and what skills of observing and describing one mindfully and non-judgmentally, and I'm not going to judge my judging here, of making tea. Or my work folders, to just breathe. Just this moment, just this task. Or I value connecting with others and having a relationship. So observing and describing and participating fully, just this moment, just this task, connecting with others. And just this moment, just this task, eating lunch, trying to build my mindful muscle around mindfully eating and using my how and what skills while I'm doing that. And my hero is Mr. Rogers, so I used him as a prompt. So we all need a little reminder sometime. So I brought in a video for a program that was done in New Zealand of some kids that participated in a school program. And it was a small study that was done. And they had something to say about what mindfulness did for them. So let's watch this video, and then they'll share with you some of the results.
Mindfulness helps you keep calm and relaxed when you're in times when you're angry or frustrated.
You learn from mindfulness so you can help yourself calm down.
The red zone is when you're like tense.
My heart starts to beat fast and then I scrunch up my fist and also my face.
Your blood might be swishing around like a big wave coming over the ocean.
You can walk away, tell the teacher, or pause, breathe and smile.
PBIS.
PBIS. PBS. PBS stands for Pause, Breathe and Smile. Everything's moving the way it's supposed to be. Your heart's at a good rate.
When you smile and just be happy, it's where you're happy, you're never nervous, and you'll make friends.
You kind of just smell and feel what it's like, and then you just look at it and then you eat it.
Mandarin juice.
Mindfulness makes me a better friend and sister. Before I didn't notice if people were feeling sad or lonely, but after I learned mindfulness, I noticed and I wanted to help.
Sometimes my brain is like a snow globe when you shake it up. It's stormy and wild, and I can't see things properly. Mindfulness helps me to calm down so I can see all the different snowflakes and understand what's happening in my mind.
Sometimes I lie in bed and I can't go to sleep because I'm worried about not getting high scores on my test. Pause, breathe and smile make me feel a lot calmer, and it will just help me fall asleep.
There's lots of little neurons in your brain, and your heart is actually connected to your brain. When you feel happy, you have a happy heart. Mindfulness gives you that happy heart.
So this small study happening in New Zealand is showing some promising results. Their PBS, not positive behavior supports, but pause, breathe, and smile, is showing some promising results in showing some focused attention and calmness and reduced stress for kiddos. But I also brought it to you because it was showing some promising results for educators in reducing stress. There's also some results showing in the US for mindfulness practices for educators, and some results when educators participate in mindfulness-based exercises, that they're showing increased focus and focused attention and working memory capacity. They're also reporting their greater well-being and self-compassion and increased positive emotions, overall feeling better. Emotion regulation and resilience, better mental health outcomes such as decrease in burnout, stress, anxiety, and depression. Improved physical health. They're reporting better sleep quality and lower blood pressure. Better relationships with students, even students that they reported that they were having some challenges with. They had a greater tendency to forgive them. And overall, they were reporting that they felt as if they were more effective teachers. So there's many benefits of mindfulness practices for educators. And you can find more information on the Greater Good Science Center website for Berkeley on mindfulness for adults. And I believe there's a link in your reflective notes for more information. So I thought it would be a good idea to practice some mindfulness exercise so you can feel the benefits in the moment. This exercise is called the 2 feet, 1 breath exercise. So for the next minute or two, if you're willing, I'm going to ask you to plant your feet firmly on the ground and take a few deep breaths. Using focused attention, like we talked about earlier, feeling the sensations of breathing. To stay focused on the exercise, you might even repeat to yourself, 2 feet, 1 breath. So, at the sound of my bell, feel your feet on the ground and take a few deep breaths. If you choose, you can close your eyes or just a fixed gaze downward at a point in the room or on the floor. So after you hear my bell, 2 feet, 1 breath, and we'll end when you hear my bell. Feet firmly planted on the ground. Begin. Perhaps your mind wandered, but you were able to bring yourself back to 2 feet, 1 breath. And perhaps you were able to feel a sense of calm. And perhaps it takes some practice to be able to bring yourself back to your breath and build that mindful muscle. And that's why it's important to set up a practice to build that mindful awareness. So here's some additional ideas for educators. We practiced a focused attention activity, 2 feet, 1 breath. We did an intention setting exercise, becoming more mindful of your why. And you can do that exercise at the beginning of a school day, refocusing your attention on why you became an educator and refocusing on your values, and bringing your attention back to that why throughout the day. You can do emotion journaling. Perhaps your hot buttons were pressed that day, or perhaps you had a joyful experience that day. You write down using your how and what skills, just the facts. What were the physical sensations and thoughts? You're building your mindful muscle. You can try a positivity journal. What were the positive experiences you had in that day? And what gratitude and appreciation do you have around those positive experiences? Again, becoming mindfully aware of your experiences throughout the day. I mentioned mindful eating. There's also mindful walking. We talked about open awareness. Using open awareness and allowing your senses to contact the world around you while you're walking. Taking the time to take in through all 5 senses the world around you. Slowing down, just this moment, just this task. And practicing self-compassion, probably more important now than ever. And our loving kindness meditation is a great way to practice self-compassion. And you can find that on the Greater Good Science Center website, as well as, I believe, a link in your reflective notes. These ideas come from Patricia Jennings' book, Mindfulness for Teachers, Simple Skills for Peace and Productivity in the Classroom. And I highly recommend this book for any teachers interested in mindfulness practices and any of the research behind mindfulness practices for teachers. Some of the benefits that I mentioned earlier for educators came out of this book. For those of you that like technology and using apps, Headspace app is free for educators for some guided meditation. My particular favorite one is the Insight Timer. It has many guided meditations. It has a meditation timer for those of you that want to sit quietly with your breath and learn to meditate using a timer. But I like the Insight Timer because you can use their search function. And if you're seeking a little courage that day or confidence, or whatever you're looking for to do a guided meditation on, you can use their search function and find a matching guided meditation. Loving kindness meditation, you can use that search function and find one and use that to do your guided meditation for the day. But here are some other ones that you can use that are free, and then they have a paid version to upgrade to. So let's just pause for a minute for setting an intention for where you can become more mindful in your daily routine and really build in a practice for becoming more mindful. Because in order to interrupt an unhelpful habit, you need to build mindful awareness. And in order to build mindful awareness, you need to have a mindful practice. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, has this statement, this intention setting statement: I will, what behavior will you do, at what time, and in what location? When you set an intention and you're specific about your intention, you're more likely to follow through. So for example, I will use the Insight Timer app and do a guided meditation after my morning coffee on Mondays and Tuesdays in my bedroom. I'm being very specific at what behavior I'm doing, the specific time that I will do it, and in what location I will do that behavior in. So go ahead and just take a moment. We'll pause for a moment. You can write it down, and that's even being more committed to your statement, your intention. But just take a moment to set your intention for becoming more mindful in your daily routine. I highly recommend James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. It's a great book for creating new habits and also breaking down unhelpful habits. So in a brief review, we went over a definition of mindfulness. We talked about Marsha Linehan's how and what skills of mindfulness practices. We talked about focused attention and open awareness. And we watched the Happify video on how mindfulness can empower us. We talked about ways that we can include mindfulness practice in our daily routines, including mindful eating and mindful walking, and ways that mindfulness has benefited educators, and ways that we can practice mindfulness in journaling, writing down our experiences throughout the day. Now we're going to shift over into talking about how habit loops might form. Specifically, this example is about how too much TV watching may get in the way of other things we value. And this is based on Dr. Judson Brewer's work. So I don't know about you, but sometimes TV watching can get in the way of time with family, of other things I value. Let's see how it might happen that this habit loop forms. There might be a cue or trigger of me walking by my TV set, and my favorite TV show might happen to be on. Chemicals release and neurons fire, and my mind might say, what's going on with that favorite character that I enjoy watching? And I feel joy and excitement in my body, and the effect is a positive one. And then I have this urge. There's just one episode, it won't be a big deal. I'll just watch that one. The next thing I know, I'm watching that episode. And I get the reward of the show that I'm watching. And I enjoy that TV show. And with Netflix, before I know it, I'm watching another episode before I'm even aware of it. So here I am in a loop of watching the TV show. So this is how a habit loop might form. Seeing that cue and trigger of seeing my favorite TV show on. Let's Let's talk about another one that affects many educators. I know when I was teaching, this affected me quite a bit, and even when I'm preparing for webinars, it still gets in the way of other things I value. So a cue or trigger might be that I just finished my lesson and I'm putting the papers away in my bag for tomorrow. My body tenses, my heart rate increases, and I have shallow breathing. I've made a mistake. I know I have. This isn't good enough. These are my thoughts. These are my automatic thoughts. And this is a negative effect. It doesn't make me feel very good. So I have this urge to continue working to make the perfect lesson. I want to avoid this negative feeling that I'm having. I want to get away from it. So I stay up late, neglecting other obligations which I value. I might start to feel better and escape some of those negative emotions and sensations, and I may get the reward of a good lesson, but I don't actually feel better all the way. I don't actually start to feel great. So that's why I have just that half smiley face. Let's talk about social media. I don't know about you, but I get hooked into this really easily. I see my phone, and I see that this is a heartwarming story about a teacher and his students. Wow, it's so amazing. What an incredible teacher. I feel the joy and excitement in my body. And this has a positive effect. Feels good. So I have the urge, I've got to share this. I share and I wait for the reward. And I get 3 likes. I get that positive reward. So here's how a habit loop may form. Let's talk about how mindfulness may work to help interrupt these unhelpful habit loops. Remember, we're cultivating mindful awareness, and we need to practice, as we talked about earlier. This doesn't happen overnight. This is a lot of work to get this mindful awareness, and we're going to talk about ways we might be able to cultivate this. So between mind and body and affect, we can cultivate mindful awareness. We can notice what we're experiencing in our thoughts and body. As Dr. Harris says, mindfulness is paying attention with openness, curiosity, flexibility, and kindness. So let's use our perfectionism example, only because it comes up a lot with educators. Our body tenses, our heart rate increases, we have shallow breathing. Our automatic thoughts are that I've made a mistake, I know I have, this isn't good enough. Well, mindful awareness can come in and help us notice that our body is tense, that our heart rate is increasing, and that we have shallow breathing. If we can actually pause and have some mindful awareness, we can also notice that we have critical mind, that we're actually judging, that this is a judgment, and we can thank our brain and say, thank you, brain, and move on. And the effect is that we're not being swept away by our thoughts, and we can interrupt this habit of having to follow through and continue working. So we can interrupt with mindful awareness. So in order to do that, we need to practice noticing our body sensations. And in order to do that, we need to practice mindful awareness of our body. So we're going to do that by doing a body scan meditation. And we do that by doing body scan meditations. And we don't have time to walk through one today, but you can learn to do one through the Greater Good Science Center, and I included that in your reflective notes. But essentially, you bring yourself through the different parts of your body and what that feels like against the chair, the tenseness in your body, and letting each part of your body soften and relax. So you take a deep breath and notice your feet on the floor and the sensations of your feet touching the floor, the weight and pressure and vibration and heat, and then your legs, and then your back against the chair, your stomach, hands, arms, neck, jaw, and your whole body. And you bring yourself through your body scan. And if we had time, we would do that meditation today. But that's in your reflective notes. So next, between the urge and the action, how do we cultivate mindful awareness between recognizing the craving and the possibility of not acting on it? The urge to continue working to make the perfect lesson, and the action of actually doing more work on that lesson. Here we need to notice having the thought that we want to work on that lesson. So here it is, I'm having the thought that I want to keep working. We notice that it's just a thought. I don't have to act on it. I'll put it on a leaf and let it float on by. And then we choose a different action. I'll go walk the dog because that is something I value. So again, recognizing the thought as just a thought. Here we can use a leaves on a stream cognitive diffusion exercise. And this comes out of the acceptance and commitment therapy. And Dr. Russ Harris provides an excellent cognitive diffusion exercise where you visualize yourself sitting beside a gently flowing stream with leaves floating along the surface of the water. And you take each thought that enters your mind and you place it on a leaf and let it float by. You do this with each thought, whether it's pleasurable, painful, or neutral. Even if you have a joyous or enthusiastic thought, you place them on a leaf and you let it float by. And you allow the stream to flow at its own pace. You don't try to speed it up or rush your thoughts along. You're not trying to get rid of your thoughts. You're allowing them to come and go at their own pace. And as you practice this exercise, you're cultivating mindful awareness of your thoughts. And this way, when you recognize the craving, you can recognize the possibility of not acting on it. You recognize that you're having the thought, and you can place it on a leaf and let it float by and not act on the urge. What happens when you actually do the action, stay up late neglecting other obligations which you value, and you contact the reward? You start to feel better, escape some of those negative emotions and sensations. So for example, what if you actually engage in the behavior? What can you do now? Well, you can get curious and reflect. When I stay up late, although I seem to feel better in the moment, I miss out on a lot of things I enjoy doing. There are other things I value. I am also tired and unhappy the next day. You can become mindfully aware even after you've engaged in the behavior and make changes for next time. So you start to accept some of those negative emotions and sensations as part of life. And you can make a difference for the movement forward. Setting an intention matters. It matters as you move forward and make a difference in your life for the future. So let's talk about self-management for habit change. You can become mindfully aware, and you can also set up a self-management for habit change program. You can do both, so you can change your unhelpful habits. To set up a self-management for habit change program, you can specify a goal and define a behavior or action to be changed. For example, we talked about too much TV getting in the way of other things you value. Perhaps you want to decrease TV consumption. You can practice your mindfulness and become mindfully aware, and you can also set up a behavior change program. You can set your new goal as 2 hours of TV a day, and you can self-monitor the behavior. You can count how frequently you watch TV and the duration. Perhaps you set up new triggers or cues and rewards for your new behavior. Perhaps as you were watching your own behavior, you found out that the remote control was the actual trigger. So you decided to keep the remote control in a drawer. And you reward yourself for using new time constraints. So as you only watch 2 one-hour TV shows, you set up some sort of reward system for yourself. You decided to go public with your commitment to change your behavior. You were brave, and you decided to announce this on Facebook. You told your partner, maybe you kept a journal, or you posted it on Instagram. And you got an accountability partner. You asked someone to keep you accountable for your new behavior change. And you continually evaluated your progress and adjusted if necessary. If you weren't making the changes, like keeping your remote control in a drawer, or even rewarding yourself for using new time constraints, you made an adjustment and changed the program. So these are just ways that you can put in a program to change your habit. I included a committed action plan in your reflective notes. Here's where you can connect to your values that we talked about earlier, about what you care about, and make a change in your habits. Being an effective and healthy educator is something that I value. What do I want? What's a goal? To start a 5-minute mindfulness practice to interrupt perfectionism. What action will get me there? Downloading an insight timer app on my phone and listening to a meditation 1 time per week for 5 minutes. What gets in the way? Stress, other people invading my space, and time management. What strategy will get me unstuck? Well, I just learned about an accountability partner, setting a timer, and going public with my commitment, and setting up a private space. The level of commitment that I have is a 3. So this is a plan that I can use where I identify the goal that I want, link to my values, identify the action that I need to take. I specify what gets in the way or what historically has gotten in the way of starting a program such as this, and what strategies will help me get unstuck. There's even a simplified version, which I introduced to you earlier, in case these don't work for you. And that is, I will behavior at this time and in this location. So these are 3 different ways to start interrupt an unhelpful habit or start a new habit. So before I open it up for questions, I just wanted to review that you learned the benefits of mindfulness practices for educators. You learned how unhelpful habits are formed and how mindful practices can help interrupt a habit loop. You learned and experienced a few mindfulness exercises and started a committed action plan. I wanted to invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, WellEducator, because I put up resources on Wednesdays and Mondays. And it's with much gratitude that I get to spend time with you. Thank you for being here with us today. Hopefully it was able to help you with some mindfulness practices and interrupting on any unhelpful habit loops.